Hello everyone who is watching me, taking forward from where I left last. I would like to remind that I came to Russia at that time, erstwhile Soviet Union, in 1990. The country where I landed was called Soviet Union, and it was one of the two superpowers that existed at that point of time. One was the United States of America, and the other was the Soviet Union. And the world was divided into three blocks. One was the bloc being led by the United States, wherein it was the North American continent, US, Canada, Australia, UK, European Union, and most of the English-speaking countries, excluding some of the erstwhile British colonies. But Australia, New Zealand were very much part of the Western world, being led by the United States. And the other part of the world was, the second bloc was being led by, it was a social bloc, socialist countries being led by Soviet Union, wherein it was Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Cuba, it was Vietnam, countries belonging to the communist or the socialist mindset. And the rest of the world was the third bloc, which was neither associated with the with the Western-led countries, nor was much associated with the socialist bloc led by the Soviet Union. But Soviet Union played a very pivotal role in industrialization of India and the Indian economy. So India was more mentally more associated with the Soviet Union than with the capitalistic countries like European countries or English or US. So the country wherein I landed, Soviet Union, had its own achievements, had its own pluses and had its own minuses, but unfortunately I did not get a chance to live here and to touch that life, to feel that life which was lived by the people of Soviet Union. But that country had Soviet Union was first in had a number of firsts to its achievements. It was the first country to launch artificial satellites. It was the first country to send a human, man, Yuri Gagarin, to the outer space. It was the first country to have the biggest submarines. It was the country which had a huge nuclear stockpile of weapons. So a country could not achieve all these achievements being first in different parts of the technological world, and if that country was not technologically advanced. Just imagine sending a human to the outer space, wherein you know nothing about, nobody has done that before, you know nothing about the outer space, nothing. So just imagine, imagine what type of clothing should be on a person who goes to the outer space. It means that's the material sciences, the material technology, the material sciences, they were at its peak in the erstwhile Soviet Union. So the president at that time was Gorbachev. Then in 91, the country was being led by Mr. Yeltsin, Gorbachev was the first and the last president of Soviet Union, and Mr. Yeltsin, Boris Yeltsin, was the first president of the current Russian Federation. I have seen this change taking place. So when this country, Soviet Union, crashed, I saw the lifestyle, how the citizens of this country, they woke up in another country. So yesterday they were the citizens of Soviet Union, and today they were the citizens of Russian Federation. So they lost their country just in one night, and everything was lost. The savings that they had, they were lost. The government that they had, they were lost. The ideology that they had was also lost. So there was a steep degradation in the lifestyle. So the people, they were not paid salaries for the months to come. And it was a country, Soviet Union was a country, it had a social governance, so, and had no place for the capitalism, for the capital. So there were no businessmen, there were no entrepreneurs in this country. The government was the only job provider in this country. So everyone was a worker. He was a worker working for the government. So even if it was a shop, the salesman in a shop was a government employee, and if you're working in a factory, you are a worker, and your employer is a government, and if you're working in a hospital, your employer is a government, and if you're working in a school, your employer is a government. So everyone was a government employee, and it is a dream in India to become a government employee, because when you're a government employee, you have some feeling of that stability, that yes, you have some stability in your life. You know where to go tomorrow, you know what to get, you know what to eat, and you have that sense of stability. So the Soviet Union, the Soviets, the people of Soviet Union, they had the stability they enjoyed the stability. There was a price control, there was employment control, so everything was under control. And all of a sudden, all these things, they disappear. You have no stability, you have no job, you have no employers, you have no employees. I mean, you are free. Do whatever you want, go whatever you want, get employed wherever you want. So it was a altogether new social setup. And people who worked, let's say, for example, I mean, a person who worked in a pharmaceutical company, he was paid salary with the tablets that were produced in that factory. A person who worked in, let us say, in metallurgy, and he was paid his salary not with the money, but with the goods that a particular factory or an organization produced or sold. And people at their places got these tablets, these bottles, these tables, these chairs as a part of a salary, and they were selling these things in the open market. And each and every corner was just a market, just an open market. So you could find everybody selling everything that they had everywhere. So this is what I saw in the last days of the Soviet Union. I mean, the first days of, not in the last days of Soviet Union, but in the first days of the Russian Federation, of the Russian government. Then Yeltsin was there, so there was a steep degradation of the social life, of the life standard of these people. But what I saw was that they did not give up. They were very courageous, and they faced this situation with courage. With courage. They were not giving up. They were sad, but they were not down. They were beaten, but they were not. They were not destroyed. They were not taken up. I saw this and during these 7 years of Yeltsin governance, the lifestyle of people changed a little bit. And it was in 2000, I mean on the 1st January of 2001, that president was appointed by, Mr. Putin was appointed as a president by Mr. Yeltsin, and Mr. Putin had 3 months as appointed president of Russia. And after 3 months, the elections were declared, and people of Russia, they had to vote for Mr. Putin and and elect him. So he was not a president-elect, but he was a president appointed. So Mr. Putin came into power in 2001, and in 2007, Mr. Yeltsin expires. I still remember that picture when Mr. Putin paid his last tribute to Mr. Yeltsin, the first president of Russia. And the feelings that I had in me, the thought that came to me was, I was thinking when Mr. President was by the side of the body of Mr. Yeltsin, I thought, well, the one good thing that Mr. Yeltsin has done is that he has chosen and he had appointed Mr. Putin as the president of Russian Federation, and because in these 7 years from 2001 to 2007, I saw a tremendous growth in the Russian economy, a tremendous growth in the lifestyle of Russians. I saw a complete different life of Russians. How the country was changing, I was a witness of this thing. And I said, yes, the credit of this thing goes to Mr. Yeltsin because he had appointed Mr. Putin. A few days ago, Mr. Gorbachev passed. And I remember a photo, I saw this on the video in the Russian news channels, when Mr. Putin paid his last tribute to Mr. Gorbachev. And I saw him by the side of the body of Mr. Gorbachev. And the thought that came to my mind was, Mr. Putin is paying a price, if you can say, or he's cleaning the debris of what Mr. Gorbachev did. What Mr. Gorbachev did was, it was with his signatures that the Soviet Union collapsed. So, to speak a little bit about Mr. Gorbachev, I would like to share my thoughts about Mr. Gorbachev and the geopolitical situation during his last years of his governance. As I previously said, the world was divided into 3 different blocks. So, Soviet Union had its forces in the Eastern Germany, and it was called Eastern Germany. So, Germany was divided. It was divided and had a wall which we remember as a Berlin Wall. So, Mr. Gorbachev, his intentions were very good, that the world should be free of nuclear weapons. Let's put an end to this Cold War that was going on for more than, I would say, roughly about more than 40 plus, 50 plus years. And the Europe shall not be divided. Let us break down this Berlin Wall and join the 2 Germanys, the East Germany and the West Germany. Well, intentions were good. And while his intentions were being implemented, Mr. Gorbachev, at that point of time, he had everything in his hands. He demanded from the NATO, the US-led NATO force, NATO bloc, that the NATO will not and shall not expand towards east, towards the borders of Soviet Union. And the NATO gave a verbal promise that yes, we will not expand towards eastern boundaries, towards east. But unfortunately, that agreement was not signed, so it had no legal implementation and it had no legal force. Why did Mr. Gorbachev did not take this promise on paper and judicially and legally? Why? It reflects the mindset, it reflects the nature of Russians. Russians, they believe in what you tell them, in what you say them, in what you promise them. They believe in this. So they believed that if these world leaders, I mean, Mr. Gorbachev believed that if these world leaders have promised him, so it will not, the NATO will not expand. So the years then, the Berlin Wall came down, the Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Union got disintegrated, Mr. Putin came in, and in 2007, Mr. Putin, in his speech in Munich, in Germany, he shared his concerns about the expansion of NATO towards the boundaries of Russia. It was his concerns from the point of view of the national security. And after Mr. Gorbachev, NATO has expanded 5 times. So there has been 5 waves of NATO expansion towards Russian boundaries. Just after the collapse of Soviet Union, 3 countries, 3 Baltic states of the Soviet Union, they got joined, they were integrated into European Union, and they were integrated into the NATO bloc. These 3 countries, they were the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Then the Poland, it was the Soviet bloc, the country belonging to the Soviet bloc. It also joined the European Union and also became a member of NATO. So subsequently there were 5 waves, and this expansion of NATO forces towards the Russian boundaries, definitely it generated the questions of security in the minds of the Russian government, the Russian president. It was his concern that we are concerned about this expansion. It's not that the Russia is expanding and coming towards the NATO boundaries. It's the opposite. The NATO was coming towards expanding towards the Russian boundaries. And if there is no Cold War, there are no opponents, then why there is a need for this expansion? Is it a logical question and a logical concern? I believe yes. I believe yes. Just imagine your country. If your country is feeling the expansion of external forces coming towards your boundaries, would you be concerned? Will your government be concerned? I believe yes. Will you take any action? Yes. If you have the power, you will take an action. So when I saw Mr. Putin by the side of Mr. Gorbachev, I saw these 2 presidents. So the starting point of the conflict that is going on right now, I mean effective 24th of February 2022, is a point where the point created by, or the point from where Mr. Gorbachev touched. So in these 33 years, beginning from 90s, early 90s, and we are sitting in 2023, Mr. Putin is there, and he's there for the last 24 years plus. So the reason for this conflict lies in 89, 90s, when NATO bloc promised verbally not to expand. And if you look into the records, if you look into the archives, if you look into the history, Mr. Putin has been sharing his concern about the NATO expansion. He had been warning NATO allies that not to expand. But when NATO started backing Ukraine, that was the point, and when Mr. Putin had to react. So was it Mr. Putin's reaction just on a neutral ground, or was his reaction on the provocation into which Russia was dragged by expanding, by coming to the NATO? I believe reaction of Russia is genuine. Any country who has forces, who has the power to react, would have reacted in the same way. And this reaction is not just out of the blue. This reaction is followed up. After it's the precedents. The history is more than 33 years, out of which for more than 20 plus years, Mr. Putin has been asking, has been requesting, has been sharing his concerns, has been putting forward his concerns about his national security concerns, and then later on warning NATO of the consequences that might happen. So it happened. So it just happened, or it was provoked. I think it was provoked. The reasons could be geopolitical dominance. The reasons could be geopolitical ambitions. The reasons could be geoeconomic concerns of the West. In my views, before coming to my views, it was in December 2021 that Putin, he put forward his three requirements in front of European states, in front of NATO, in front of US, the Western Bloc. And those three requirements, they were totally ignored. And Putin said, yes, there might be a reaction from our end. US said, okay, do what you can, do what you want. So this, do what Putin could, do what Putin wanted, is a result of this conflict. So did he invade Ukraine? No. He did not invade Ukraine. So this buffer, this territory called Donbass, is a place of is a ground for this game, is a ground for this play that is going on. Donbass, basically, in the Russian Empire, is a land, is a territory which belonged to Russian Empire. When Soviet Union came into place in 1917, the Russian Empire was removed. There was a revolution, and the Soviet Union came into existence. Soviet Union was born. Mr. Lenin gave some Russian territories to one of the states at that time, of one of the states of one of the regions of Soviet Union called Ukraine. Then Mr. Stalin gave some territory, artificial territories to Ukraine. Then Mr. Khrushchev gave up some territories that is called Crimea to Ukraine. As a result, the Ukraine started gaining territories, but originally these territories, they belonged to Russian Empire. So as a result, the ethnic group residing in this Donbass, in these territories, they're ethnically Russians, by language, by genes, by mentality, by mindset. They are Russians. There's a Russian ethnic group. So for 8 years, beginning from 2014, after the central power in Kyiv was seized by the so-called, not the so-called, by the current Ukrainian government, which were Ukrainian, which were European-centric, which were Western-centric. So beginning 2014, this part of Donbass, they did not accept the government that came into place, because that government that came into place was the first law that they imposed, that they formulated, was that the people living in Donbass, they cannot speak in their language. So it was a language ban. It was a ban on the language which was imposed and which was unacceptable to the people of Donbass. So this is from where the problem of Donbass emerged. It started. So they did not want to surrender or accept the central Ukrainian government, the central government. So the Ukrainians, the central Ukrainian government, started air bombing the regions of Donbass. As a result, so the people of Donbass, they started defending themselves, they started saving themselves. So they formed their own regional, we can say that, the governments, the regional governance. So the Ukraine got divided. The whole Ukraine minus Donbass, that was Ukraine. So for 8 years, Russia was silent. To solve this problem, there were two agreements. It was called Minsk I and Minsk II that came into place. And Germany, Poland, and France, they are the signatory to these Minsk government at par with the Russian Federation. Russia Federation was never a part of a Minsk agreement. It was just a guarantor of this agreement because this Minsk agreement was between the Ukraine and the republics of Donbass. And Russia was a guarantor that this agreement is being observed and being fulfilled by these two bodies at par with Germany, France, and Poland. And if you look at the sanctions, the reasons and the sanctions being imposed by the European nations, by the Western-led countries on Russia, is the reason is that Russia is not fulfilling the Minsk II agreement, whereas Russia is not a part of this conflict. Russia was not a part of this agreement of Minsk. Russia was just a guarantee at par with these two. So if Russia is not fulfilling the agreement, it means Poland, Germany, and France, they are also not fulfilling this agreement at par. So in spite of supporting Russia and pushing Ukraine towards the fulfillment of these agreements, to fulfill its duties, which Ukraine took as under this agreement, these European nations, they began imposing the sanctions on Russia. For 8 years, these sanctions, they are being imposed. So Russia is changing slowly. It's developing inside, slowly. And for these 8 years, during which economic sanctions are being imposed on Russia, the Ukrainian government continued bombing, continued war with the Donbass Republic. As a result, the people of Donbass living over there, they are suffering. They are homeless. They are refugees in their own land during the 8 years. So, as a result, Russia has to interfere. It has to intervene and started supporting Donbass. As a result, Russia recognized Donbass, the two republics of Donbass, that is the Donetsk and Lugansk, on I think 21st or 22nd of February 2022. And on 24th of February 2022, Russia informed and declared that Russia is going to support Donbass and send its military onto the territory of Donbass, not onto the territory of any Ukrainian territory, de jure, de facto, but on the de facto territory of Donbass. And this war is going for the last 6 months. So, in this video, I tried to share. Maybe I was not following the track of my thoughts, because my thoughts, they were just one point to another, one point to another, one point to another. So maybe it was a little bit messy because I was not following the track, but there's a lot to share and there's a lot to show, but because of the time limits on these videos that I have, I wanted to touch different points, and maybe in the upcoming videos I will stop point by point and will try to explore more. I mean, try to share more, try to throw more light on the point so that you can have a better vision. So in the upcoming videos, I will try to share more about how this all began and what is going on and what might be the outcome. Please feel free to respond. Please feel free to ask. Thank you for watching.